How do you analyze an anonymous ransom note? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. Before we proceed, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. In today's video, we're going to analyze the ransom note from the JonBenet Ramsey case. If you're not familiar with that case, a little girl was allegedly kidnapped, and this is the note her mother found on the staircase. The mother read this note, then called the police, and later the daughter was found dead in their wine cellar. I've got an AI voice here who's going to read the note, and as usual, just like when we're watching a video, as I have comments, I'll just pause and give you my insights into the kidnapping note.
Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction.
So right off the bat, there is something odd here. Typically, when you're writing to someone, you don't say listen. You might say something like pay attention or read this very carefully. Something that indicates that the person's reading what you're writing, not listening to what you're writing. But this ransom note starts off by saying, listen carefully, which may be an indication that it was actually dictated. And I think the criminal profiler, Pat Brown, is the one who caught this and talked about it in a video she did on this case. So if you're not following along with my Ramsey series, this is the second installment. In the first installment of the series, I theorized that, and I think lots of people have this theory, I theorized that JonBenet's older brother, who was 9 at the time, accidentally killed her, and then JonBenet's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, orchestrated a hoax kidnapping to cover up the murder in order to protect JonBenet's brother, Burke. That is my theory. Of course, I've only analyzed one interview so far, and right now we're analyzing this ransom letter. So if my theory is right, and we're just going to work under that premise, the listen carefully in the kidnapping note might actually indicate that John and Patsy realized JonBenet was dead. Kind of like the McCanns, they decided, okay, we're in fight or flight mode. Let's fight. We're going to cover this up to protect what remains of our family unit. John took Patsy into the study and said, Patsy, listen, I'm going to dictate a letter to you. You write it down. And then we're going to set this out on the staircase like it's a kidnapper who left it for us. And we're going to call 911 and we're going to lie our asses off so that we do not get caught. We're going to stick to the lie. I think something similar happened in the McCann's case. So it's another situation where the husband probably took control of the situation. And the very first words of this letter, Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully, might actually indicate that that's what happened. That John took charge, told Patsy to start writing, and then dictated the letter to her. And I also think I read somewhere when I was doing a little bit of background on this case that the paper used to write this ransom note came from within the house. It was actually part of John or Patsy's stationery. So you either have to believe that a kidnapper broke into the house and then took the time to write a very extensive 3-page ransom note, or this was a cover-up. And the parents, who are not actual kidnappers, overdid it by quite a bit and wrote a very complicated, long ransom note. All right, so let's start from the top and just notice how odd it is that it starts off with listen carefully. That might indicate it was dictated.
Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction.
Another sign this might be a hoax is if you're foreign, you don't call yourself foreign. So let's say this was ISIS who kidnapped her. They wouldn't say, we are foreign. They would say, we are ISIS. Because you're not foreign to yourself, right? You are local to yourself. You're in a foreign country kidnapping someone's daughter. So this is yet another sign, them calling themselves foreign, that this is a hoax.
Listen carefully.
A hoax kidnapping letter written by parents who are trying to cover up the crime of their son, or a crime that one of them committed. I'm still not decided whether I'm 100% in the camp that Burke committed the crime. Maybe Patsy did it and then she and John covered it up, or John did it and then he and Patsy covered it up. It's still uncertain. I'm still developing this theory the same way I did with the McCanns. But once my theory crystallizes over time, just like I did with the McCanns about 9 videos in, I become very certain in my opinion, and I'm willing to go all in on my conclusion. So far, I'm keeping all options open.
Listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter.
If you're listening on podcast mode, there were 2 misspellings there. The kidnapper said, we respect your business, and they spelled business incorrectly. And then they also spelled possession incorrectly. Later in the letter, there are some more complicated words that the kidnapper uses, which indicate that these misspellings were deliberate to try to make it look like the author's first language was not English, which is more evidence that this was a hoax. It seems like the author started out thinking, okay, I'm going to make this sound like a foreign person wrote it, so I'm going to do some misspellings. But as they continued writing the letter, they forgot about that. And they started spelling stuff that would be a lot harder, like particularly, and situation and tampered, etc., correctly without any errors. So the fact that the spelling errors only occur towards the beginning of the letter is a red flag that this is someone trying to mask their identity, because they drop that mask later when they actually spell stuff correctly.
She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account.
So now we have the demand from the kidnappers. What's odd about this demand? First, the amount, $118,000. That is a relatively small amount when you consider that John Ramsey had 2 private jets and a yacht. Secondly, you will withdraw $118,000 from your account. How do they know that he doesn't have $118,000 sitting around in a safe in his office behind a painting, and he could just pay them in cash right now? So the assumptiveness that A, he has it in his account, and B, that he doesn't have easier access to it is odd. A typical ransom note you would expect would say you need to pay $118,000, drop it off here on this date, come alone. If you call the police, I kill your daughter. Done. But this one actually reveals, it seems like leakage, that the author knows there's $118,000 in his account, and the author knows he does not have that in cash somewhere in the house. So the author's leaking that they know the easiest way to get this money is to go pull it out of the bank, whereas a kidnapper would not know what the most expeditious way to get the money is. They would just tell him to get the money and not particularly care how he does it. Also, just as far as context goes, and I've seen other places And I did some more background on this one just because there's more characters involved. And I think it was Pat Brown who mentioned that John Ramsey actually got a check for $118,000. He got a bonus that year, a Christmas bonus for that exact amount, which could be a coincidence. It could be the kidnapper, let's say this is a real note, was familiar with him and knew he got that bonus. It is strange though. Are most likely to me, the number $118,000 came to the author's head because it was just in their head as an amount. And that would mean that it was either John who wrote this letter, either by hand or by dictation, and he just had that amount in his head, or Patsy had that amount in her head. You know, for example, if John came home earlier that day and said, "Guess what? Great news. I just got a bonus for $118,000." So the choice of the precise amount matching his bonus is a red flag, and the small amount of the ransom request is a second red flag.
You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between...
This is interesting. When you get home. If I live somewhere, I call it home. My house is my home. However, if I'm a kidnapper inside someone else's house, would I call it a home? That's an odd choice of words. For example, you would expect the kidnapper to say, when you get back to your house, put it into a brown paper bag. Would they call it a home? The author calling this a home suggests that it is actually their home, right? They're referring to John's house as a home. It probably means that it's their home as well, which to me is more evidence that the author is either John Ramsey or Patsy Ramsey, or both of them working on it collaboratively, or by John dictating this letter to Patsy and her writing it down. And there is a little bit more evidence of dictation. For example, if you're listening on podcast mode, you won't be able to see this. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that there are actually words that are scribbled out. So for example, the line, "We respect your business, but not the country that serves." After "we," there's a word that's scribbled out, which might actually be, "We don't respect your business." And then, "but not the country that serves." So this looks almost like someone dictating and then changing the direction of their sentence so that the transcriber goes back, crosses out the word, and then it's corrected later in the sentence, "but not the country that serves." For example, if someone had just made a basic error, they would, in like a typo, they would say, "We don't respect your business, nor the country that it serves." Or, "We don't respect your business or the country that serves." But if this was an error when someone was dictating and then decided to change the sentence, "We don't," actually, you know what? Scratch that. Scratch out "don't." "We respect your business, but not the country that serves." That would make more sense as a dictation, where the whole meaning of the sentence can change just by crossing out one word without having to cross out more words later.
I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be
I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow. How do they know? How does the author know when they will read this letter? For example, if they kidnap John Bonet at midnight, what does tomorrow mean? That is strange. Also, I think that that they were supposed to be taking a trip to Atlanta the morning they found this letter. So, for example, the time early in the morning, so this could all be handled before they went on their trip, is very convenient. I think that is a red flag, though. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow. What if Patsy woke up to get a glass of water in the middle of the night and found the letter? The tomorrow wouldn't make sense. Saying tomorrow indicates you know exactly when someone's going to read this letter. Instead of, I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. on Tuesday, or on the 1st of the year, on January 1st. Or, this happened around Christmas, right? So on December 26th. Saying tomorrow, I think, might actually be a little bit of leakage from the author that they know when they're going to read, when this letter was going to be read. And if you were hoaxing this letter, you would know, okay, we already read it, so just have it say tomorrow, so that, it makes sense that we read it today. You wouldn't be considering the things a kidnapper would be considering. Whereas a kidnapper would know, okay, I wrote this, I need to make sure that they're waiting by the phone on the 26th, not the 27th, so I can demand my money from them. I feel like this tomorrow is a little bit of leakage, that this was written after the fact by someone who wasn't too concerned about the specifics of the time.
The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter.
Now we're getting into the realm of an overly long ransom note. Remember, this note was written inside the house. That means the person, if we are to believe that someone actually kidnapped JonBenet, we have to believe that they snuck into the house at night and spent all this time advising them to be well rested when they collect their money for them, which is kind of absurd. Does it mean that this is 100% not written by a kidnapper? No. However, if I'm stacking up my poker chips, I've basically already gone all in that this was written by someone in the family. This was not written by a stranger kidnapper. This is a hoax letter written by someone who did not actually kidnap JonBenet, and that's leaking through in the amount that was requested, in the fact that it says tomorrow rather than a specific date.
If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions.
Also, JonBenet was kidnapped on Christmas. Are banks open the next day? Like, if you were a kidnapper, wouldn't you want to know? And you're telling the person to go get the money out of their account. Surely you would have checked if the banks are open so you can actually collect your money. Otherwise, now you have to hold this kidnapped kid for 1 or 2 extra days. So please let me know in the comments, are the banks actually open the day after Christmas? I don't think they are. And if they're not, it's just more evidence this is not a real kidnapping note. If you're going to go through all the effort of breaking into someone's house, taking their daughter, requesting money, basically guaranteeing yourself decades of your life in prison if you're caught, you're going to make sure that that person is able to go to the bank to get you your money ASAP.
Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The 2 gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded.
This is an interesting line. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, will result in your daughter being beheaded. What did Patsy do immediately after finding this letter? She called 911. And then after she called 911, and this is something I pointed out in my other Ramses video, after Patsy called 911, they later found JonBenét's dead body where she had been hit over the head and strangled. And not once do we ever hear them express any remorse about that 911 call. Based on this letter, you would think in the context, Patsy might think to herself, oh my God, if I had not called 911 that morning, JonBenet would still be alive. All we had to pay them was a stupid bonus amount my husband earned. They're a very wealthy family. All we had to pay was that stupid bonus check and she would still be alive. If only I had not called 911. But you never see her express that. It's as if she knew that calling 911 would not result in her daughter being beheaded because her daughter was already dead. And this was a cover-up to hide the fact that her daughter was killed either by her husband or by her son or by herself. So Patsy's phone call, I don't think, from the analysis I've seen of this case and other people talking about it, no one makes a big enough a deal about that. If this were an actual kidnapping, JonBenet's death was a direct result of Patsy calling the police. If Patsy had not called the police and they had simply waited around for that phone call, they could have paid the kidnappers and gotten JonBenet back, right? So the fact that they don't express any remorse about that or second guessing themselves, and the very fact that Patsy just called the police right after getting this letter, and on that 911 call, she says, I just got this note, indicates that this was not a real kidnapping. It was a cover-up. You can tell by the way they don't regret calling the police. There's no hesitation or debate about it. And after JonBenet was found dead, there's no finger pointing. For example, John saying, why the hell did you call 911 without reading the letter? I could have paid this. You don't see any of that. And that's why it's so hard to lie. If you're trying to do a hoax, it's very difficult to consider all the things someone who's actually in that situation might do. You need to think in 4 dimensions to try to put yourself into a situation that a real person would be in. And you cannot always act consistently the way they would.
Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies.
If we catch you talking to a stray dog, your daughter dies. What does Patsy do? Immediately picks up the phone and calls 911. I don't think, how do you know the kidnapper's not still in the house? And this is something someone brought up in my live chat when I premiered my last Ramses video. Apparently the Ramses, during this time, right, while Patsy found this letter and then called 911, sent Burke, their son, to his room. Well, if you have this letter in front of you, and the kidnappers are telling you, we are monitoring everything you do. We will know if you talk to a stray dog. We will know if you call 911. How do you know they're not still in the house watching you? How do you know Burke is safe up in his bedroom? Surely you would all be huddled in the kitchen, holding knives, or if John has a gun handy, sitting in the kitchen wondering how the hell they're watching you. Do they have your phone tapped? Once again, it just reiterates the point. It is very difficult to lie, especially to pull off a hoax perfectly, because not only do you have to say all the things someone would say in that situation, but just contextually, you have to act like someone would act in that situation. If your daughter were actually kidnapped and the kidnapper told you, I am watching you, well, then you'd probably bring your son down to the kitchen with you and all be huddled together. And if the kidnapper said, if you call 911, your daughter will be beheaded, surely you would debate for a little while or at least wait till 8 to 10 p.m. to get that phone call before you risk calling 911. They didn't do either. They sent Burke to his bedroom and they called 911 immediately. Contextually, it does not add up. And that's why part of deception detection is statement analysis. The other part is using logic and understanding the context of what's going on. And with this set of facts, is this how you would act? Is this how someone actually in the situation would react? And to me, it stinks of a hoax. They're acting like there is no real threat because they know there is no real threat. They know John Bonet's already dead. They know there's no kidnapper watching them. Hence, they feel fine putting Burke in his bedroom, and they feel fine calling 911 to initiate their alibi, to kick off the hoax.
If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics.
Remember, early in this letter, they were spelling business and possession wrong. Now they not only know the words law enforcement countermeasures and tampered, and what other stuff are they saying here? Basically, they're using lots of American vocabulary, even the tone of she dies. It sounds very American. These are complicated words. They're all spelled perfectly now. And the she dies sounds like something out of a movie script. If you do this, she dies. If you do that, she dies. So you can see they started off with the masking. They wanted to John and Patsy, I think, wrote this letter. So I'm just going to drop the possibility that this is a real kidnapper at all. So John and Patsy, in my opinion, wrote this. They started off wanting to make it look like an actual foreign faction, like some stranger terrorist group kidnapped their daughter, hence the misspellings, and referring to themselves as a foreign faction, which a foreign faction would not actually do, because you're not foreign to yourself. You do not declare yourself foreign. I'm a foreigner. You don't say that. Someone asks where you're from, you say I'm an American. If I'm in Japan and they ask me where are you from, I don't say I'm a foreigner. I say I'm American. They might call me a foreigner. I call myself an American. So they started off wanting to paint this picture of a foreign terrorist group. However, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs in, the mask is starting to slip. They're using big words. Now all of a sudden this kidnapper who can't even spell business is talking about law enforcement countermeasures and the possibility of alerting bank authorities. It doesn't add up. There's internal inconsistencies.
You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us.
This is interesting. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter. I think that's some leakage there. I think there's a 100% chance that someone in the family killed their daughter. Like I said, I'm leaning towards Burke did it simply because of how John and Patsy spoke in this interview, which I analyzed the other day. It looked like they were being very selective and guarded with their words in order to protect someone. Of course, they could be trying to protect themselves. But I'm leaning towards both parents came together to protect Burke. Kind of like the McCanns, where Kate and Jerry McCann came together to protect Kate because she made a mistake, which ended up in the death of her daughter, in my opinion. And I think I always think that it's not the father in these cases. For example, I don't think Jerry McCann accidentally killed Madeline, because I think if that were the case, Kate would have turned on him. As I say in my videos, I think, as I've started saying recently, a mother's love, motherly instinct is probably the strongest thing in the world. And if you look at the videos I choose to cover, I was noticing this myself. I tend to gravitate towards cases where it's an aberration to that. For example, the reason I came back to YouTube was Ruby Frankie, a mother who was sadistic and actually publicized herself torturing her children on YouTube. I think it affects me very strongly when I see an aberration with mothers, the way they treat their children, because I think it's so evil. And because I have such a great mother. I love my mother. So in this case, I think that what happened here is either Burke killed JonBenet by accident, or Patsy did. Because I think if John, the father, had killed her, Patsy would have turned on him. Kind of the same way I think that if Jerry had accidentally killed Madeline, Kate would have turned on him. These are not psychopathic people. I don't think the Ramseys are psychopaths. I don't think the McCanns are psychopaths. Right? That doesn't mean they're not negligent people. I don't think they're psychopaths. I think O.J. Simpson is an example of a psychopath, if you watch my video on him. Or Casey Anthony is a psychopath, if you watch my video on her. That's very different from the Ramseys and the McCanns.
You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back.
So, if you try to outsmart us, 99% chance your daughter dies. Follow our instructions, 100% chance you get your daughter back. If you were the parents and you got this letter, would you not at least consider waiting for the phone call to pay these people before you call 911? The fact that Patsy picked up the phone and called 911 immediately after getting this letter, to me, is the biggest red flag of all. There was no debate, no waiting for the call to come in. She literally read them say, if you call the police, your daughter dies, and she picked up the phone, called 911. I don't believe it. Also, I don't believe it because if you understand the story of JonBenet, before her death, she was the apple of her mother's eye. The name JonBenet is actually a portmanteau of John Bennett, her dad's first and middle name. So he literally named JonBenet after himself. And JonBenet's middle name was Patricia, Patsy's name. So these parents literally named their daughter after themselves. I feel like they had a lot of love for her, or at least a lot of affection for her and for Burke. I don't think this was an abusive family from what I've seen here. Now, then again, I've only analyzed this letter and one interview. I feel like this cover-up stemmed from fight or flight instincts from the parents, accepting the reality that JonBenet was dead, and deciding they needed to come together to protect Burke or to protect Patsy. That's my instinct. I could be totally wrong, right? I've only analyzed one interview and this letter so far.
Follow our instructions and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. Victory. S.B.T.C.
All right, so that's the ransom note. And we're only 34 minutes in, so I think we have time to analyze the 911 call. So I'm going to do a quick cut here. Let's analyze Patsy's 911 call to police. All right, if you're listening on podcast mode, I'm playing the 911 call. And the YouTube video with this call is saying it was 5:52 a.m. when Patsy called the police from a wall phone in her kitchen to report her daughter was missing. Now remember, that call said that the ransom note said if they just waited till 8 to 10 p.m. tomorrow, so I don't know if that was supposed to mean this day or the next day, and they only paid a relatively small sum of $118,000, they would get their daughter back alive. But immediately, first thing in the morning, we're supposed to believe that Patsy read the letter and then called the police immediately, which to me, in the context, just does not add up. All right. And then it says she was standing only feet away from where the ransom note had been found at the top of a stairwell leading to the basement, where John Bonet's body was discovered 8 hours later.
911 emergency. Police. What's going on? 5515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am?
Okay. If you've seen my McCann's video analyzing how to analyze an emergency, you know that the FBI actually has a best practices checklist for intake of an emergency 911 call. However, in the 90s, I don't even think this checklist existed. So the dispatcher might not pick up on things that we would pick up on here. For example, notice how Patsy gives her address, which means that's her priority, instead of my daughter is missing, which is a slight red flag in terms of priority. It seems almost like she's psyched herself up for the call and she was expecting them to ask, what's your address? But instead they ask, what's your emergency?
911 emergency. Police. What's going on? 5515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping.
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. We have a kidnapping. That's her basically saying what her emergency is. We have a kidnapping. And then what is the very start of the ransom note? We are a group. We respect your business. We. Does this mean she wrote the letter? Of course not. But it's interesting that she's speaking in terms of we. When someone's making a statement, typically we like them to speak in the first person so we know they're speaking for themselves, that they're taking full possession of what they're saying. They're taking real full responsibility for the words coming out of their mouth. Also, we have a kidnapping. She didn't say my daughter's been kidnapped or my daughter is missing, which is a strange way to phrase it. We have a kidnapping. She even takes possession of the kidnapping. Instead of saying my daughter's been kidnapped or there's been a kidnapping, she says we have a kidnapping. She's almost taking possession of the kidnapping, which is a strange way to phrase it. Which, if I eventually conclude that I think their kidnapping was a hoax, makes sense. The kidnapping is theirs. The kidnapping is hers and John's because they fabricated it. We have a kidnapping makes sense if you look at it through the filter where I'm seeing it through, where John Bonet was already dead, and then they faked a kidnapping to cover it up to protect whoever killed her. Also, people might ask, well, hey, if John Bonet got hit on the head by accident by her brother, why not just call the police or the paramedics and just handle the process? Well, the thing is that not everyone thinks that logically in an emergency. In an emergency, for example, someone like John might be thinking about his reputation. How does this make me look if one kid killed the other kid? Will this follow Burke for the rest of his life if he killed his sister? Will he be known as the boy who killed his sister for the rest of his life? And how, if he's a narcissistic, how will that reflect on me? How will it look if my son killed my daughter? How embarrassing for me. So you never know what people's motivations are in an emergency. It's actually really hard to predict.
Hi, please explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left in our daughter's.
So what is Patsy's priority? She has still not said that her daughter is missing. When the officer asks, what's your emergency? She says, there's a note left and our daughter's gone. So the priority, the big problem for Patsy, the thing she wants to get across to the police is this note, not the missing daughter, which is odd, which is actually the sign of guilty knowledge when you're analyzing a 911 call. One major red flag on 911 calls is when the caller expresses a problem that is not specifically the victim who needs help. And here, what is the emergency? At the top of the list is this note. And then the daughter being missing. Also, she said, we have a note. There's a note left. She didn't say we discovered a kidnapping note. Our kidnappers have my daughter and they left a ransom note. The way she's phrasing this is very vague. Also, why would it be vague? Why would she be so reticent about saying a kidnapper took my daughter and left a ransom note? Because lying is hard. If she knows that's not true, it might be easier to just stick to stuff that's true. And saying we have a note left here is true. There is a note left on the stairs. What she might be omitting is that she wrote the note and she left it there. But it's still a true statement. We have a note left here. And my daughter is gone. And by gone is another way to say dead. So we have a note left here and my daughter is gone is 100% true. It's very easy to say. Of course, she's omitting the context. And that's how about 99% of deception is done. If someone's trying to deceive you, 99% of the time, they'll do it by just leaving stuff out. They won't actually fabricate a lie. That's much harder to do. And that's why I don't think Patsy is a psychopath or John is a psychopath. Whereas I do think Casey Anthony is a psychopath because she can actually fabricate stuff out of whole cloth, out of thin air, and say it directly to the police's face, which is very difficult to do. So listen to Patsy's answer and notice how she doesn't directly say her daughter's been kidnapped, nor does she say this note is specifically a kidnapping note, a ransom note. Everything she says could be true, even if my theory is correct.
15th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hi.
We have a kidnapping. Did she say my daughter's been kidnapped? No. Just we have a vague kidnapping. And that could be true. They concocted this phony kidnapping. That's easy to say. We have a kidnapping. The kidnapping consists of my husband sitting me down at the desk and having me transcribe a ransom note that he dictated to me.
Please explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone.
There's a note left and our daughter's gone. Both of those could be entirely true. So that's actually a very big point. The way this is phrased is deceptive in that it's vague, which is a red flag. When someone gives you a vague bit of information, especially on a 911 call, where you're expecting the caller to try to be as specific and helpful as possible because there's an emergency going on. We have a note, perfectly reasonable. She's just leaving out the fact that she wrote it and she left it there. And our daughter's gone. She's just leaving out the context that by gone, she means her daughter's dead.
A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old.
Notice how she didn't say my daughter is kidnapped, because that would be a direct lie. That is a lot harder to do. And if you've binged all my videos, you should know by now how very, very difficult lying is. Lying is a lot harder than you might expect, especially when the pressure's on, where there's high stakes. Like, for example, if you get caught lying, you go to prison, and you're lying to the police. That's high pressure.
She's gone. 6 years old. How long ago was this? I don't know. I just found the note. My daughter's dead.
How long ago was this? I don't know. I just got the note. So she can't even give a ballpark. Well, we went to bed at midnight and I just woke up and I can't find my daughter. I've been looking for an hour. I don't know. Very vague, very unhelpful. One sign of a guilty caller on the 911 call from our FBI checklist. And if you want to see the full checklist, watch this video, How to Analyze an Emergency. And the checklist is right there. Is non-cooperativeness. So when someone does not specifically answer the dispatcher's question in a useful way, it's a sign of a guilty caller. And overall, there's about 11 signs of guilty callers. And when you see them, you can basically bet your money that the person, A, did the crime, or B, knows who did the crime and is just trying to cover it up.
Say who took her? What? Does it say who took her? I don't know. There's a ransom note here.
Does it say who took her? I don't know. Now she's calling it a ransom note. Well, remember, if she read the note, it says who took her. SBTC. Even the first line says who took her. A small foreign faction. Why would she not answer that to the police? It's strange. At the very least, it's non-cooperative.
Here, it's a ransom note. It says SBTC.
Okay, so she found who wrote it.
Victory.
If we look at the note here, it actually says Victory SBTC, not SBTC Victory. Does that mean she's saying this from memory? I don't know, but the reversal is strange.
Please. Okay, what's your name?
Okay, another note about 911 calls, if you haven't seen my video about this. Politeness is the sign of a guilty caller, believe it or not. You might be thinking, hey, I'm polite. I say please all the time. I say thank you all the time. If I called the police, I would say thank you and I would say please. Very uncommon. If you're calling 911 in an emergency, even the most polite person is very unlikely to say ingratiating things like please and thank you. In fact, a lot of times they don't say, saying hi or hello is a sign that someone might not be in a real emergency, that it's a hoax or a guilty caller. Something as simple as saying hi. And she started off this call by saying police. Real callers in real emergencies don't say please. They don't say thank you. In fact, they come off very, very rude and very urgent. And urgency and rudeness are actually the number one indicator of an innocent caller. And this is not the first time Patsy has said please. So does this make her guilty? Does this mean this is a fake call? Not necessarily. However, between the ransom note, which looks like a hoax, between this interview I watched of them, which looks like they're hiding the identity of the real killer, and all the red flags in this 911 call regarding uncooperativeness, the vague answers, the politeness, which indicates it's not an actual emergency, and some other ones I might have missed. If you're a member of the channel, you do have the checklist here. So if I'm missing something and you are a member, feel free to drop your notes about this call over here on this post about 911 calls. And I see lots of you have analyzed the 911, what's his name? Michael Peterson 911 call. And I'm looking through those notes. And if this video does well, I might actually do a video about the staircase revolving around the 911 call. So if you're a member, drop your notes about this call if you want to on that post, this Patsy Ramsey call.
Your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God!
I'm the mother, not I'm John Bonet's mother, which is strange, which might indicate that she knows John Bonet is already dead. So she's not even referring to her as John Bonet anymore. I'm the mother of a deceased little girl.
Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got up and she was...
We just got up and she's not here. The number one sign of a guilty caller is extra information, alibi-related information. Please, we just got up. That is unnecessary to say. The dispatcher is asking, do you know how long your daughter's been gone? Useful information would be, last time I saw her was midnight when I tucked her into bed because we just got home from a party. So she might have been gone 5 hours, right? You'd be racking your brains to try to provide useful information. Instead, what does Patsy do? She says, no, I don't know, which is totally not helpful. It's unhelpful. Saying what time you put John Bonet to bed is helpful. But instead of saying something helpful, she says, we just got up. So she and John just woke up. Why does she feel the need to say that? It sounds like an alibi. Well, we just woke up, so we couldn't have done it. I just woke up and I'm calling you. How could I have killed her? How could I know who did it? It's extraneous information. Extra information about the crime itself is the number one indicator of a guilty 911 caller. So the number one indicator of an innocent caller is urgency. Urgency and rudeness, believe it or not. Signs of an innocent caller. Patience and extra information about the crime. So we have a kidnapper. He left a ransom note. We just got up. He might have, I think I might see one of his shoe prints. The window was open. All those things, right? Things talking about evidence or evidence of the crime are all red flags for a guilty caller. Because typically what it is narrative building. The caller is guilty and they're trying to get their alibi onto the record. They know these 911 calls are recorded. They know they want to get their alibi expressed immediately because they know they're guilty. Innocent people aren't trying to solve the crime. At the same time, they're trying to solve an emergency situation.
You are here? Oh my God, please. Okay, well, somebody. I am, honey. Please. Take a deep breath. Please, okay? Hurry.
Right, please, 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 more politeness and more repetitiveness. Please, 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 hurry. Another sign of a guilty caller. Lots of liars like to, they know they need to talk on a 911 call, but they don't want to give too much information in case some piece of evidence contradicts what they said on the 911 call. They're acutely aware their 911 call is being recorded. But they know they need to talk. They know they need to sound anxious. They know they need to slip in little clues to their alibi. So what do? A lot of the time, they say stuff like please, thank you, etc. And they repeat stuff. So here, hurry, please, please, please. Not please send someone. Not even that, right? Or send somebody. Are you sending someone? That's what you would expect to hear. Or the note said, don't call the police. So if you send someone, make sure they're plain clothes. Nothing like that, right? She doesn't even, so she's not worried about a squad car pulling up to her house. Right now, she thinks that John Bonet is kidnapped, and if she calls the police, they're going to kill John Bonet. You'd think she would, A, wait to call the police, or come up with a more creative way to contact the police, just in case they are being monitored. And B, do you think she would, at least if she's going to call the police, tell them to send a plainclothes cop? She doesn't even mention that here. So, as far as statement analysis goes, this is a fail. This is a red flag 911 call. It's a sign of a guilty caller, someone who either committed the crime or knows who committed the crime and is trying to hide the information they know. B, just contextually, just using our brains as detectives and trying to put ourselves into the shoes of someone who's actually in the situation. Kidnappers have her daughter. She knows that's a fact. She can't find her daughter. She has a ransom note. They say, call the police. She dies. What does she do? She immediately calls the police. And then she does not even ask them to only send a plainclothes cop. There's no request like that here. What does that tell us? It means she knows the ransom note isn't real. How would she know it's not real? Because she knows who actually wrote it.
Patsy, 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 Patsy.
Help me, Jesus. Patsy's the priority of the call. Patsy and the note are the priorities of the call. Not John Bonet. I think the dispatcher actually had to ask for John Bonet's name. Or did she even say John Bonet's name at any point in this call? I'm not sure. Okay, and then Patsy hung up the phone. If you called 911, wouldn't you want them to confirm that someone's on the way? I don't think the dispatcher ever even confirmed that a squad car was on the way, which is another red flag. You'd think you would say, are you sending someone? You wouldn't hang up till you know that they're actually sending someone. Let's see, do they ever even confirm they're sending a unit to the house?
I'm the mother. Oh my God! Please. Okay, I'm sending an officer.
Okay, so they do confirm they're sending someone. I'm sending an officer over, okay.
Okay. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out and she's right here. Oh my God, please. Okay, girl. There's somebody. I am, honey. Please. Take a deep breath. Please, okay. Hurry. Patsy, Patsy, Patsy.
Okay, and we have the please, hurry. Repetition. They know they need to be talking. They don't want to give more details. Kind of like how the McCanns, whenever they're asked how far away the tapas bar was from the room, they always say like 50 meters as the crow flies, 70 meters by foot. Repetition, scripting. Does this sound rehearsed? Does this sound planned out? As far as this series goes, let's see if this video gets 10,000 views and then we'll add to this series. Right now, my McCann series is doing exceptionally well, so if you haven't watched that one, check it out. If you have any other good Ramsey interviews, do send them to me. I feel like Patsy is the worst, is the most likely of the two to actually leak information we can use. So if you have interviews of Patsy, please do send me the links. I'll also be looking myself. Let's get this one to 10, 20,000 views like the McCann's ones so we can turn this into a series. If you haven't seen my videos on Amanda Knox, do check that out. McCann's, I also have a playlist on false accusers. Until next time, stay true.